everyone. Marilynn Hughes with the Out of Body Travel Foundations. This is our Your Questions Live on October 20th, 2021. So thank you for joining me. I am so happy to be here. I want to remind everyone, please subscribe to our channel. Subscriptions help us to become more searchable on YouTube and the internet. And if you are able, please consider becoming a member by clicking on the join button up in the upper right-hand corner there. You'll see 5 different options for membership levels that you can consider. Memberships help us to keep our resources free for everyone in the world. I'd like to invite anyone watching who wants to come into the chat room and ask questions. Please do so. That's what this is for your questions. I'm going to start out with a few emails and questions I've received via email and talk a little bit about these. The first 2 things I wanted to share were some of our members' latest experiences, breakthroughs in their out-of-body travel journey. And I just think it's very exciting. So we have our first is from a member who has had a few out-of-body experiences, but this was a first for this member. So he shares, "Wow, it happened. I was nearly sleeping, thinking intensely on steps between understanding, love, and wisdom. I then felt the need to look within my mind at all the ringing sounds, tinnitus-type ringing of all sorts of frequencies, which is normal for me, and where I hear various voices often all speaking at once. I then came to the realization all is frequency. I started being the frequency. Then, like a vacuum, I was quickly sucked up through my crown chakra, and it felt really good as my eyes began to roll back. But I then realized I was leaving the world body, and that pull was enough to reduce the vacuum, and then I was normal consciousness again. This was nothing like any OBE I've had. No vibration stage, no being near the body or anything like that. It was an extremely powerful suction into the greater reality of frequency." So congratulations to our member there who is being brought into the mysteries of vibration. And, you know, I speak so much and so often about how knowledge is not information, it is vibration. So he's being taken to that next level. We have another member who had some breakthroughs I'm going to share. So she shares, I tried to relax and be conscious, and I had my eyes closed, and instantly I could see the room with my eyes closed, but it was a different room in a different house. I was lying in a bed different than mine. There were people in the house, a man, an older woman, and 2 daughters I knew were mine. I could describe the details, but this would be too long. This house I was in had a patio, and I saw the most beautiful landscape with rolling hills and mountains and beautiful French chateau homes and small castle-like homes from my room balcony. I was Chinese in this place, or Asian. I felt I lived there, but yet I knew I lived here. I went on the street and saw the city. I can only think like it was a parallel life, a past life, if this is possible. The civilization felt ancient but advanced since I saw people talking on cell phones. I also saw people flying like energy balls in the sky, and I flew in the sky with them. I knew they were astral traveling. I don't want this email to be too long, but at one point I knew I had to come back to my body, and I started feeling the tugs and pulls to go back, but I didn't know how to get back. I remember one of your lessons was saying, just think where you want to go. So I thought of the house and the room where I started, and I was there, and I laid down in the bed there and closed my eyes and instantly opened in my bed here. Welcome, Vicki Collins says, beautiful day to you, Marilynn. Beautiful day to you too as well, Vicki. Thank you for joining us. And John Hi, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining, both of you. And so we'll continue. Anyone who wants to come in and ask questions is welcome to do so. Just going through some questions I've received and some experiences I've received from people who have made some progress via email. So I wanted to go a little further on with this member's experience. I had responded to her saying you could have visited a parallel reality, a past life, and even a home you have on the other side. With all the souls flying around as energy balls, I tend to think you may have gone to a place you have lived in heaven. But it is a beautiful experience, and I'm glad you were able to get back from some guidance in my books. It's major progress. So she replies by saying, it felt like a physical life, and I was Chinese-like or Asian. I think it's more of a parallel life or a past life on another planet. My house was on the second floor of a building in the city. From my balcony, I could see the nice homes by the hills, and they were stunningly beautiful. One of the children hugged me when I was sitting on my bed, and I remember thinking, oh, she's hugging me because I am her mom. And I felt the man was my husband, but I had no interaction with him since they left me sleeping in the bedroom. But I went downstairs to the street and walked around. When I returned, I remember the doorbell man nodded to me, recognizing that I lived there and letting me in. I remember thinking, I want to take another look from my balcony before I go back to my body. I mean, the one on Earth, which I did. Then I remember noticing the queen-size bed being much lower than mine on Earth, and a royal blue velvet comforter and the plants in my bedroom. As a matter of fact, the plants were the first thing I noticed when I realized I was in that room, because I thought, I don't have big plants in my bedroom. This is not my bedroom, but it feels like it is my bedroom. And I pointed out to her in my reply, so much detail you remembered. So I agree, based on everything you've shared, this was probably parallel or past life. And then she shares, I remember thinking, laying down on the bed with the blue velvet bedding over there and closing my eyes to sleep so I could wake up in my room here. Then I opened my eyes, but I was still over there. And I said, nope, I'm still there. So let me try again. And I did. And then I opened my eyes here, and immediately I looked at my husband and said, you will not believe what just happened. And so that was an interesting experience. This is one of our members this is one of her first out-of-body experiences. It is definitely her first journey into a parallel or past life. It was very powerful for her. One point she said, for Marilynn, for you, you've seen so many beautiful things, but for me, this was really astonishing because I have not had so much experience like you've had. And this is one of the things we definitely experience with out-of-body travel, that when you do experience it for the first time yourself, the beauty, the power, the immensity of it is very, very overwhelming and beautiful. And so we see that a lot. So here's a question that someone sent me and asked me to do it on our next live. In your out-of-body travels, have you heard heavenly beings call God Almighty by the well-known tetragrammaton Yahweh, YHVH, Hebrew consonants, Yod He, Vah He, Yahovah, or Jehovah, as reviewed and described in the beautiful words of the prophet of the Old Testament, Isaiah 42:8. I am Yahweh, that is my name, and my glory I will not give to another, nor my praise to carved images. And to be honest with you, I don't think I have. Most of the time, God is referred to as God, and it may just be simply just because that's the word that is familiar to me, to speak of the Lord God Almighty. I have had experiences where I've seen and heard things other than those names. But I don't recall off the top of my head having heard Yahweh, Jehovah, or Jehovah in my experiences. But again, that's just my experience. It doesn't mean that no one else has had that, because I'm sure it's possible that they have. And again, anyone who wants to ask any questions, this is your time, your questions. So feel free to do so in the chat room. I am going to refer now to some other questions that were sent to me. And so here's one. Is the process of getting out of our body scary? Is there anything to be concerned about? It is scary sometimes. Different people have a different experience. Some people will have just a mind-blowingly beautiful first-time experience. Other people will be afraid. My first experience in my adult life, not the experience I had at the age of 9, which was beautiful and shockingly, overwhelmingly amazing. But the first experience I had in leaving my body as an adult, I was very scared. I thought I was dying. I didn't know what was happening. The intensity of the power, I think people are blown away the most when they're not prepared for the vibrations and how powerful they are. Sometimes they're afraid by the sounds of the voices. Sometimes they're just afraid because of what I was, which is, am I dying? Because you're leaving your body, and we associate that with death. It's not necessarily a scary experience. It's just that we process it differently based on how we receive it. We can be afraid because of the intensity, the majestic, overwhelming nature of it. We can be afraid because we think we're dying. We can be afraid just because things are out of control. And so anything to be concerned about? Not really. Not if you are engaging in your spiritual journey in a prayerful manner, and you will have a lot of protection. And you want to be engaging in out-of-body travel from a prayerful place. You don't want to do this as some kind of parlor trick, some kind of game. You don't even really want to do it just because I want to prove that I can go to some part of the room and read a number. I mean, you can, but that's not really the purpose of it. So if you are pursuing this from a prayerful, reflective, respectful place for the fact that your object is God, then you don't have a great deal to be concerned about. If you are doing it in another way, then the things you might want to be concerned about would be lost souls who may be drawn around you, wandering spirits, trickster spirits, dark spirits, even demonic types of things. I've heard a lot of things from a lot of different people. And a lot of times, if people are kind of playing around with their spirituality, or sometimes people who weren't even intending to have an out-of-body experience, but were not in a great place, they will immediately see ghosts, lost souls, wandering spirits, or they will sometimes even be faced with a dark or demonic force. Remember to always have the name of Jesus Christ on your lips. Jesus Christ crucified is also one of the most powerful set of words you can utilize to protect yourself in such a situation. Also, pray the Our Father, most specifically the first stanza. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That stanza has the power to, it makes demons incapable of continuing what they're doing. Repeat it over and over if you have to, because sometimes you do have to. Christ crucified. Repeat it over and over again. It will have power in heaven. Remember, Jesus Christ was the Word, and words do have meaning, power, and vibration in the spirit realms. Another question that I have is, can we direct our experience? Somewhat. I'm always instructing people to be more inclined to allow and surrender to the will of God, because you will see a great deal more by doing this than by trying to direct your experience. Now, sometimes people direct their experience for a particular purpose. You know, they might be praying for somebody. Okay, you can try to direct your experience in that regard, that you want to pray in the spirit when you're out of body. But in terms of a general rule, you can direct somewhat. Your movements will be very slow, labored, and I'm not sure what the right word would be for it. It's going to be very slow, labored, and burdensome. When you allow the Spirit of God, however, to direct the experience, you're just going to soar. You're going to see things you can't even think of. And that's part of the reason why the surrendering to God is so much more effective. Vicki Collins asks, have you heard the 23rd Psalm energetically? I have heard that energetically. I'm assuming from your question that you may have also had that experience. One of the things we do experience in out-of-body travel is that we are often taken into sacred texts, ancient sacred texts, and taken into them energetically. And sometimes we are given to experience them energetically as the words are recited. Sometimes we are given to touch the words in their original language, etched on a wall or on the side of a cave or a mountain. Sometimes we are given to hear certain things from ancient sacred texts through the mouths of angels, or even prophets, saints, mystics, sages, or ascetics who come to guide us. And there is this amazing thing that happens in those experiences where you are taken into an alternative, deeper understanding of those texts. That would be the hidden meaning that lies within all holy words. There is an energetic understanding, an energetic meaning, vibration. Again, knowledge isn't information, it is vibration. And so hearing the 23rd Psalm energetically, the purpose would be for us to understand all the vibration that comes from that, and what lies behind the words as they were being dictated to David in writing that psalm. And the same applies with the other ancient sacred texts and the other books of the Bible. We have an excellent super chat of $10 from John Lysicatos. He says, thank you, Marilynn, for these interesting live streams today. Thank you so much, John, for the super chat. Those are so appreciated as well. If anyone is benefiting from the things that we are talking about, the super chats, just continue to help us more, add to our memberships. Thank you so much, John, for that wonderful super chat. Appreciate it very, very much. And so let's see, can we make our experience better or worse? Well, that's an interesting question. Certainly we make it better when we fuel our experiences through our prayer life and through our daily devotion to meditation, spiritual reading, when we are informing our spirit. When we do those things, we make it better, can certainly make things worse by doing the opposite, by engaging in things that would be destructive to the spiritual life within us. Now, in relation to how that might apply when we are actually out of body, we can certainly make the experience better or worse in a variety of ways. But again, the majority of this will come from the spiritual life, the practices that you are engaging in when you're not out of body, because all of that informs how that will become better or worse. One of the things that is probably the most common thing that I often tell people to consider working on is that in the out-of-body experience, when we react by being extremely startled, afraid, or just excited, we can literally thrust ourselves right back into our body. And so I often talk to people about the importance of preparing for that and being willing to discipline your mind so that when those moments occur, you might be able to move through them very calmly so that you will not thrust yourself back to the body. This, can happen when you see someone who has died that you haven't seen in a long time. You just get so excited that you're seeing them. And then you're like, oh man, I got so excited. And then you couldn't continue the experience. You can have that happen when you're just afraid of what's happening, or even just startled. Anything that causes extreme excitement, startling, fear, which can happen at any point in an out-of-body experience. And the fear is usually related to something we don't understand unless you're dealing with spiritual warfare, which is something you can read about in the Mysteries of the Redemption in the later parts of the books. So you can make your experiences better or worse, but the primary way that we do it is the way that we live our life. So that is what impacts the experiences when we are actually there. And that goes to the next question that someone sent me, which is, can we shorten our experience unintentionally? Absolutely. And that's exactly how. Excitement, being startled, being scared, afraid, or just not ready, because this is kind of a mechanism that the eternal has in place to protect us from things that we can't actually predict. So if we're not ready or prepared, or if we're just really scared, then this is one of the mechanisms the eternal has to return us to our body quickly, and the experience is over. So yes, we can absolutely shorten our experience unintentionally. So Vicki Collins says, I began to say it over and over. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of darkness, it was known I was going to die, was not to be afraid. I would return. So Vicki says that this is how she experienced the 23rd Psalm energetically. And very beautiful. Thank you, Vicki, for sharing that. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to just jump right on in here. So someone also asks, can we lengthen our experience? Not by a great deal, but we can try. Even with the experience I shared earlier, you see that the person who had this was able to lengthen it just enough to get a little more information that she wanted, but also the previous experience to that, where we have the gentleman from the foundation who's had a few OBEs, but experienced his first plummet into energetic vibration. But he also reported in his experience, let me make sure I pick up the right one. I realized, but I then realized I was leaving the world and my body, and that pull was enough to reduce the vacuum, and then I was back to normal consciousness again. So this particular individual had the experience of being startled by, oh, I'm leaving the world. I'm leaving my body. I'm leaving the world. I'm going way out there. And that startled nature sent him back. So it shortened his experience. But in the experience of the other, she was able to just gather a little bit more information, but she was heading back and she knew it. Most of the time in our out-of-body experiences, we do have a certain objective that is to be fulfilled in the experience. And once that objective is achieved, the pull, the suction is going to start pulling us back to our body. And Vicky adds, felt as if it was protecting me. And I wouldn't be surprised by that at all, because, you know, we've talked about many times how certain prayers protect us, the words of certain prayers, the words of certain scriptures. Even the Our Father is a scriptural prayer. Hail Mary is a scriptural prayer. The Apostles' Creed is something that I've experienced as protecting us as well. And so we do know that there is protection in certain words. And you see this across all religious traditions, that, you know, this is where prayers and mantras come from. They come from this understanding that words are powerful. They have energy, they have vibration, they have meaning. And so it is something you see in all traditions. So for instance, I'll just give you a few examples. You know, in Hinduism, it's the Gayatri mantra, which is a healing mantra. Buddhism, the Om Mani Padme Hum. Islam has prayers, and they actually use prayer beads that are similar to a rosary, but they do their own set of prayers on those. Buddhists do as well. They have malas, which are the beads where they do their mantras over and over again. Even in Native American tradition, there are prayers that are specific for certain occasions. You also have, in the Native American tradition, something that I think is interesting is, and we see this in Black Elk, who, by the way, is being brought forward as a candidate for sainthood in the Catholic Church, which really surprised me because I did not know that he was Catholic. But what's interesting, you see in the life of Black Elk, in his tradition, and many of the Native American traditions, they believed that when someone has a vision, that you need to reenact that vision on Earth. And so Black Elk's goal was to reenact that vision on Earth. It's almost like a play of the vision, and that gives it power. And what it is it's grounding the vision that was received in heaven, grounding it down to earth. And you know, one of the things that Black Elk said that is tragic and sorrowful was he said near the end of his life that he didn't have the strength to fulfill the mission that was given him for the people. And he felt that he had not fulfilled in totality the mission that had been given in his hands through that vision, the big vision that Black Elk had. And the reason it's so tragic is not because I feel he failed. It's because I feel that it was the opposite, that he did everything that he humanly possibly could. And it was just not something that was going to happen on the ground. And there were a lot of powers at work in that. But we all know the overwhelming power of the white man upon the native people in our world, in our country, was not something that I think anyone could have honestly overcome. And so it's sad that he felt that he missed that vision. It's interesting because I have some books that have many of the visions that the native people had in the earlier 1800s. Some of them had visions of Christ, and some of them were warned about the coming of the white man. Might have been earlier. I don't. Some of them were definitely earlier. Some of them were in the 1800s. Many of the visions in the book I'm speaking of were in relation to the ghost dance religion. So it was around that particular time. But many of these native peoples received warnings that the white men were coming and that their world was going to change. But what I read, there was no indication that anyone really had the power to alter that outcome. It was a warning. It was letting people know it was coming. And so sometimes we receive visions like that because it's a warning. So we're prepared when the time hits. Sometimes we receive visions that are giving us instructions that are particular. If you make some changes, if you take a different path, a different road, that you can change this outcome. And so these things come in different ways. Welcome to 77 Sunsets. Thanks for joining us. Glad to have you here. Feel free to ask any questions you have. This is your time for your questions. And we're just talking about a lot of different questions that people have submitted to me via email and some that are coming through here. So thank you for that. So another question that I have received is there an optimal state of consciousness for out-of-body travel? That's a loaded question. But when we go into the out-of-body travel state and we enter into the vibrational state, it is a very deep level of consciousness. And so the optimal level is this very deep state, which has to be cultivated and practiced. So this is part of the reason I'm always suggesting to people that they look at meditation for 3 hours or more. And I tell people you need to be lying down so that you can be in a position where if anything occurs, you can leave your body. But part of the reason for that lengthy period, especially in the beginning, it can change as you cultivate this and become more adept at the practice. But in the beginning, to get to that deep level of consciousness, many people need that 3 hour of meditation. And it's probably not going to happen the first time you do that. You're going to do it over and over and over again. And it's informed by your spiritual reading, by your prayer. A lot of people definitely benefit from reading The Mysteries of the Redemption, a treatise on out-of-body travel and mysticism that I wrote. You can download that at outofbodytravel.org. It lays out the map of the other side, and it energizes people somehow to begin having some kind of spontaneous experiences. So the optimal state of consciousness is a very deep one. It's not a shallow place. You are going to go very deep. And that's why the 3 hours of meditation. I know it's hard for a lot of people to do that because people have jobs. So whenever you're able to do that on a day off or in whatever way you can make that sort of thing happen, just understand it does take discipline and practice. But we also want to be aware of what we are allowing into our mind space throughout the days, because what we allow into our mind space can affect what we can experience out of body. So you want to be looking at creating a clear and pure spiritual input for you throughout your day-to-day life as much as is possible. So those are all very important things too. So definitely everyone feel free to ask any questions you have in the chat room. And I'm going to go on here to another question. Are there practices to prepare ourselves for an out-of-body experience? And I kind of just talked about those. And that's definitely something you can learn even more about in our film, which is available to watch for free on the Out of Body Travel Foundation YouTube channel. It is called How to Have an Out of Body Experience. There is a sequel to that called The Tao of Mysticism, How to Become a Deeper Mystic. And those practices and all the stages are laid out for you in those films. So definitely check that out. Also, Come to Wisdom's Door is a book that I often have people read in concert with The Mysteries of the Redemption, which will lay out the steps and stages. Also have a book called Astral Projection Made Easy, which is almost like a little devotional of the different stages and steps that you can meditate upon daily. And that can be a little guidebook for you. All of those are available for free download at outofbodytravel.org. Vicki has a question. Have you gone through phases of lamenting? Oh my goodness, yes. I'd love to know more about what you are referring to in your own experience, but this is such a common experience of mystics. And it's interesting how Vicki put it as lamenting. I love it because it's really hard to describe this to people as to what people experience. But we go through these phases where we go through things that are really beautiful and joyous, and then we go into the darkness, and then we come back, and then we also just go through these phases of lamentation where we just feel the pain of the world, the pain of other people's souls, and we feel this intense longing for God that we cannot really completely meet up with in this world. It's something that we will experience in the beatific vision after our crossing from this life. And so but this lamentation goes further. I mean, you can also talk about the dark night of the soul. I've been listening to the audiobook for Mother Teresa's Come Be My Light about the 40 years of darkness that she went through, and the way that she experienced the difficulties, the darkness, the abandonment of the poor. She carried it within her spiritually, literally from the inception of her mission in 1948 until her death in 1998 or 99. I can't remember the exact year, but she felt this absolute desolation that was just profound. It's very interesting to listen to because all of those people who have mystical experiences and those who follow a deep spiritual walk will struggle with this sorrow, this lamentation that Vicki is talking about here. 77 Sunsets has something to say. Let's see. When my mom passed, I had a shared near-death experience. It ended at a large circle like the sun, with clouds burning like flames. At this point, I stated I could go no further beyond this barrier. Did she take me there or did I take her? Good question. I'd probably say you both took one another. My guess would be that honestly, neither one of you would have been in charge of that. That would have been something that God did for you, and that there was a purpose in it, and that God allowed both of you to share this. And there is a point in the afterlife journey. There is a point in the bright light, the tunnel with the bright light at the end, where you have an inclination. If I touch this, if I try to go beyond it, I cannot return to earth. There are barriers, there are boundaries, and it sounds like you intuitively understood that you had come upon a boundary that you could not cross. So I would probably say you both took one another, but God is the one who allowed and energized it. And what a beautiful thing that you could share that moment with your mother. Vicki asks, it is deep sorrow from depths unknown. I weep and weep, curled in my bed nightly, as if these sorrows are far beyond my own. I just weep till I stop. Well, beautifully said, Vicki. Adriana says, thanks for sharing 77 Sunsets. Yeah, I appreciate it as well. What a beautiful experience to have been shared with us. Vicki, part of what you definitely experience has to do with the uniqueness of your mystical gift. And I'll just share a little bit, and Vicki, you can tell me how much you're comfortable with me sharing here. But Vicki has a profound mystical gift, and she is given insight into things to come, world events. She has visions where she sees the darkness that is overtaking our world. She is shown some of the things that may come to pass, which are very tragic and very horrifying. So, Vicki, with this unique prophetic gift, okay, thank you. Vicki says, share anything. So, in her unique prophetic gift, she sees, the interior workings of the world on a nightly basis. And this gift, I think, comes, with this deep sorrow from the depths unknown that you speak of, because you are weeping and weeping, and those sorrows are far beyond your own. The weeping is a weeping for humankind, for humanity, for the earth. It wouldn't be possible, I think, for you to see all the things that are shown to you, because most of the things that you are shown are of a prophetic nature, and they are primarily showing the darkness, not something wonderful and light-filled or the goodness. It's the darkness that is your calling. And I believe this lamentation, this sorrow, it's really similar to what Mother Teresa experienced when she literally was in this state of bliss with Jesus and with God. And then as soon as her Missionaries of Charity was approved by the church and she was on the streets, she went into this darkness. And she entered into that darkness of the poor, the poverty, the abandonment, the really catastrophic illness and violence that these people lived with. And she processed that darkness. There was a sense of, in order for her to fulfill that mission, she had to share that darkness. And when you have a mystical gift like you have, Vicki, you are sharing in the darkness of the realm. And you are seeing almost nightly tragic, horrifying, energetic realities that underlie normal daily events in our world. You see the energetic truth, which is often very much veiled in a great deal of deception, evil, derision, sinister behavior, evil, darkness below the surface of the world's events. And that mission, that purpose of your mystical gift alone would totally explain what you're experiencing. It's definitely a difficult calling. It's not an easy path, but it is something that I think will accompany you with this unique special gift you have to mystically see what underlies the workings of our world. Adriana says, it's a natural side effect to lament and even fall into depression for sure. Lots of love to you, Vicki. Yes, and I think it's not unusual even so for people who have mystical experiences, out-of-body experiences, but even those who do not, to lament and fall into depression. I think it's a normal part of the ebb and flow of the spiritual life. There is always this hunger and thirst for this uniting with God, uniting with Christ. And we are always seeking that. And when we don't feel it, or when we feel that we are further away from it than we've been in the past, we crash. It's a normal thing to happen. But there is a natural ebb and flow that we have to accept as part of the journey. And we have to remember that those moments that we do have where we feel close to God have to be food to us for the times when we are further away, or we feel we are further away, because oftentimes in the dryness is when God is actually the closest to us. We just aren't able to feel it. Vicki says, weeping releases, lamenting comforts. Many times it is for the children. I can understand that. Adriana says, yes, Marilynn, I feel the same to a certain extent. I lament and fall in depression sometimes. And I do too. I totally am right there with you all. I think it's part of and parcel of the spiritual life, and probably part and parcel just of life itself, because we are separated from the one cause, the one thing that makes us feel whole. 77 Sunsets asks, is the purple circle seen in meditation our connection with God? Ironically, that's a great question, 77. I talk about in Come to Wisdom's Door that when you start opening up, you will start seeing purple and gold in your mind's eye, in your meditations, in your prayers. And that is a wonderful indication that you are spiritually awakening, opening. And so that is an excellent sign that you're seeing the purple in your meditation. You probably benefit from looking at Come to Wisdom's Door, which will lay out all those different signs as well. Vicki says, thank you, Adriana. So kind. Yes, very nice. Thank you, Adriana, as well. Adriana says, I hear a buzz in my ears. Is this something? Now, it depends on, probably. Now, I'm not sure if you're talking about what I call when the frequency in the room shifts, and all of a sudden, one or both of your ears, you'll feel that frequency shift in one of your ears or both. Vicky says, thank you, Marilynn. As always, you're awesome. Thank you so much, Vicky. You're so kind. But what I always associate the buzz in my ears with is a frequency shift. Now, I don't know if you hear that all the time. If you hear it all the time, you're probably acclimating to a higher vibration as you're moving through this spiritual opening that is occurring. Okay, and so Adriana says a buzz that goes on and on. So I would say that that is most likely related to the fact that your frequency is being adjusted, your vibrations are being raised, and you're hearing that because it's different than what you've been occupied, the realm that you've occupied in the past. It gets louder when you close your eyes, Adriana says. Yes, that would be to be expected. For those who experience that buzz that happens in one or both ears, that's usually a frequency shift in the room, and that obviously it's an indication to us to pay attention to what's going on because something has shifted. So we want to take note of what is going on around us. It's very important to do that. When you have the more continual buzzing, it is usually more often related to the fact that you are undergoing, whether you're aware of it or not, vibrational raisings and frequency adjustments in your subconscious, unconscious life, which means when you're sleeping, it can also be happening. You could be aware of it. You could be experiencing some of that if you're having some types of out-of-body experiences or other types of mystical experience. You may not necessarily be aware of the vibrational raisings or the frequency adjustments, but you may be having other experiences, and those things may not be conscious to you yet, but they're happening. So this is actually a sign that this is happening, that the vibration is being attended to, which is excellent because that's what we need to pursue the out-of-body travel experience and to continue going further and higher in those things. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining me. Give you a chance here if anyone has any other questions you'd like to ask before I sign off. Please do so now. In the meantime, I'll just remind everyone, please subscribe to our channel. It is how we remain more searchable and become more searchable on YouTube and around the internet. For those who can, we'd love for you to consider becoming a member. Click on the join button on the upper right-hand corner of your screen. There are 5 different levels of membership that you can choose from, and it helps us so very much because it makes it more possible for us to keep providing all of our materials for free to anyone in the world. And that is extremely important. So let's take a look. Thank you bunches from Ashley in Colorado. Hey, Ashley, lived in Colorado for 25 years, missing the mountains, but hey, good to see you. Vicky, much love, Marilynn. Much love right back to you. Sage, this was great. Thank you all. Thank you, Sage. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And until next time, thank you from California, from Adriana. Thank you. I'm in Arizona. So we have Colorado, California, and I'm sure we have lots of other places here. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And until next time, we'll see you then.